right, team. So appreciate you all getting on. We have an extremely special guest on the call with us today, Miss Marysa Maggio. And I've known Marysa for quite some time, and I've seen her growth, and it's just incredible to watch. And I'm just honored to have her on this call because I know for sure we're all going to learn something today. We're going to learn a lot more than just one thing. So grab your pens, grab your notepads. Let's get rocking and rolling. So, Marysa, thank you again so much for getting on with us.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for having me on. I truly appreciate it. I'm excited to pour into you guys and hopefully you take more than one thing away.
So for people that don't know too much about you, I'm sure they've heard the name, I'm sure they see you on the leaderboards, but um, can you share first? I always like to ask, what were you doing before insurance?
So I was actually in college serving tables and bartending. So that's what I was doing prior. And that's how I got into the industry. I wasn't with Family First Life. I was with my practice company. It's a three-letter acronym, and they're a captive organization. After 2.5 years of being with them, I went to what I thought was going to be my forever home here in the insurance industry. Turned out not to be. About 5 years now back, I got started with Family First Life and truly never looked back. So that's kind of how I got here and kind of why I'm pushing forward and just excited to be here every single day.
Love it. So it's been 5 years now, or a little over 5 years.
Well, we're hitting 5 years in August.
Okay, love it. So I always like to ask because Hall of Fame producer, successful business owner now. Were you like day one? Were you a Hall of Fame producer? Like, did you walk into this business writing the kind of business you're writing today?
Absolutely not. When I came into this business, Frank, I was, like I said, fresh out of college, and no one really like wakes up and is like, I really want to go into life insurance and, help and sell life insurance, right? But I went home, I told my sister Christina, I was like, I'm a loser. Like I just graduated college like 2 weeks ago and and I don't have a six-figure income job. But like I was at the time, I was like so serious, like in my brain, right? But that's my 20-year-old brain talk. Now
Mhm.
I fill out some applications, I go to an interview, and I walk into what I don't know is going to be a life insurance overview. Now prior to that, Frank, I had just lost my mom, my junior year of
Mhm.
college in the midst of it. So I did know how important loss was. I understood like, hey, that's really important when somebody, passes on. So sitting in that room was really powerful for me. And that's essentially how I stepped into the industry and I was terrible. Now, just to kind of explain how terrible I was, Frank, the way we used to train at that particular company is like, you'd be in someone's car for like 2 weeks, right? Like glued next to them, right? And I walk into the house, with my trainer, if you will, and we go over some, what they refer to as some no cost benefits. And I'm like, cool, like I'm like in there, like this is great. And I'm 20 and just got guys, I was as bad as somebody could be in this business. Okay. We walk out, he doesn't make a sale, right? Because I'm just sitting there basically. And I was like, so how much did you make in there? And he's like, what do you mean? And I was like, how much did you make in there? Like we gave them the benefits. And he's like, I made nothing. We made zero. We didn't sell. And I was like, okay, so this is commission. Like, so that's how bad I was. So that's how much I didn't understand the business structure itself, right? So that first month in the business, I struggled a lot. But the biggest thing for me after, like now in hindsight, looking at, hey, like, why did you struggle so much? I was worried about all the wrong things. I was worried about what is the person going to think about me? Are they going to think I'm too
Mhm.
young? Are they going to think I'm not educated? So I came into this thing, Frank, and I blanked my first month. But after that, once I got the wheels, the training wheels off, so to say, and I understood what I was doing and why I was doing it, it started to click. Now, was I a top producer, like in that organization? Sure, you didn't have to do much to be so. But with that being said, it did take me a while to get my feet wet. And that first month, I made no money. And that really doesn't happen often, but I was that person.
I love to hear those stories, and there's so many of them by top producers, and it's good for people to hear that because like people don't come out of the womb selling insurance at a high level, right? Like everybody goes through their go through, And so I appreciate you being vulnerable and sharing that. Let's say, like, not just business wise, like production wise, but would you say you're the same person you are as the Marysa 5 years ago walking into this business?
Absolutely not. The Marysa 5 years ago walking into this business, wouldn't have been able to handle it, wouldn't know how to handle it. And I think that we all go through that in our own phases. But what we have to realize is we have to we have to act our way into being, right? If I want anything in my life to be better or to do better or to gain, right? I have to think about that thing in a positive light. I have to view myself in that same exact light as well, or I was never going to get there. Now,
Hmm.
that took me a little bit to grasp. But one thing if I give myself a pat on the back and a good job for my 21-year-old self, one thing I was good at, Frank, was I was good at I wanted to be developed as a person. Losing my mom 2 years before that, it was like, dude, like, you got no choice. Like, it's all you now. Like, like it's on you. And I think it was a positive pressure in a way. It was a needed pressure, right? I had nothing to fall back on. Dad's not in the picture. Like, my sister
Hmm.
wasn't coming to save me. So it was important I think it's important for people to understand you're going to grow, or you should be growing like each and every month. And you should be able to look back and be able to be like, hey, last month I wasn't doing this, but like now I am. Or the opposite. Last month I was doing this and it was really helping me out. And now I'm not. I should get back on track.
Mm. But are there some things that stand out? Like maybe if you look back, you may even laugh, like, man, I can't believe I used to do that, or I can't believe I was just, spend time doing this or hang out with these people, or like, are there any things that now that you look back, you could say I've come so far?
Yeah. To be honest, I've just to put it out there, I'm very, very transparent. I hope nobody is offended on this call, but when I was a kid, I feel like I kind of got like the partying and all that stuff out. But being still 21, 20, to 29 years old, like there's always going to be that pressure of your friends around you of let's go out, of, let's, let's drink every night. It's like, at what age does that stop? So
Mm.
in hindsight, it's like, what are some of the things in your life you got to stop doing? Now, in my life, some of those things where I had to choose if I wanted to surround myself with certain groups of people, right? And where I grew up wasn't necessarily like, the best like place. It wasn't the worst place, but it wasn't the best place either. There's, you know, guns, drugs, etc. Right? With that being said, I knew I didn't want to be a part of that. And the main reason was because I had the blessing and the curse of seeing people be hurt by those different things. And I really had to
Hmm.
make a choice, Frank. Like I moved from Boston and being in the city my whole life to the literal middle of nowhere when I was 25 because I was like, I have to get away from everything and I
Mm.
need to focus. If I'm going to run a business, it needs to start now. And, so those are some of the stupid things I used to. I also, one of the other things I would add in addition to that, Frank, would be, I would be like, I'm going to dial at my house. And this is like back when we're in home, right? That was like I moved halfway through the state so I could go to the Connecticut office at the time, quite a bit easier. Like I would dial at home and I'm like, I think that the blanket I washed, 3 nights ago really needs to be washed again. And the dishes should be done. Like, never mind the dishwasher. Let me hand wash
The
them.
house
Right.
has
Like,
never been so clean.
yeah, like my sister truly, when she walked into she was like, I've never, this is like, it's great in here. Like, what do you clean every day? And I'm like, yeah. So those were some of the things that I had to get out of my own way to be able to see clearly and straight. Whether that was people, situations, and circumstances, it's like sometimes we have to realize like we're in our own way. And I think that
Hmm.
that's the biggest thing I've learned being in this industry.
So did you actually move for your business,
Yes.
like solely, or that was one of the main reasons?
That was the main reason. It was the
Wow.
only reason. Yeah.
Talk about whatever it takes, huh?
Yep.
Love to hear that. How about habits? Are there some things that, I mean, that maybe you're willing to share that you look back, even if it's like simple things of how you spent your time, or like what were some things that you had to change there?
Yeah, so one thing that I've really got, more involved with, over the past couple of years is, you know, spending time with God. I've always
Mm,
had the belief, and I've always believed in God, but that's something that I felt like spiritually I needed to be closer to. And
mm,
at the time, I feel like that's something I really lacked in was, hey, you can have this belief, but like not understand it, but then try to use it to like your advantage. Does that make sense? Like
mm,
at my convenience. And I think
mm,
what I realized is like my habits of like, okay, now I didn't spend time alone with God. And you actually taught me that, Frank. TAG, time alone with God. And I love
mm,
that. And I wasn't doing that, right? But over the past couple of years, I've been doing that. And I realized like, hey, this doesn't just it helps me every day. It helps me stay disciplined. It helps me stay on track. It helps me remember when, it feels like everything is, it feels like all the tires are flat and I got no more gas in the tank. Like you're, you're still going to get there. Don't worry. So habits like of waking up and doing nothing, right? Like habits of waking up and going on Instagram instead of waking up and doing
mm.
something to provide for myself, whether that's journal, whatever it might be. So things like that, they matter a lot more than I think we realize. If you don't have a morning routine, you're setting yourself up to fail, period. I don't care who you are.
Mm,
Like,
mm. You know what's funny is I realized that like those things that you're talking about, those habits, when you're doing them, you can almost convince yourself that it really isn't doing too much. But as soon as you stop, boy, do you feel it. Boy, do you see the difference in your life. And so that just shows you the power of just your compounding habits, right? Just what it can do over time. You may not feel it day to day, but 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, who knows what that's going to look like. So I love that. I'm so glad that you shared that. I appreciate you sharing that. All right, here's a good one. If you could do it all over again, what would you do differently?
only thing I would do differently is when I first came here, I would have I would have wished I would have trusted the opportunity more and started building quicker because I was kind of jaded by like the first two places
Mm-hmm,
I worked. And I wish I
mm-hmm,
didn't do that. I wish I didn't allow anything to jade me. So I could go back and do it different. To be honest, that's about the only thing I would change because I feel like any adversity that I face in this business, it's something you have to face and be able to overcome.
well, not to poo poo the other companies, but like, what are some things that jaded you that created that block for you to really hit the ground running here?
Yeah. So some of the things that jaded me, it was like, okay, so like no leads. Is there going to be a lack of leads? We have leads today. Are we always going to have leads? Right. Like that might sound silly, but in the other companies, like that was a big problem. Like,
Mm-hmm,
like quite frankly, Frank, the company I worked with right before FFL, I was getting my sister started with me and like she was running behind me on like my leads. You know what I'm saying? Like there was no other way to get leads. So
mm,
that always made me like weary, so to say. Um, Also at the other companies, there was a to a point, there's like this secretism. Like, it's like everything's a secret. Like to me, that's weird. It's like, dude, like if we're working at the same company, like why do we have to keep secrets,
mm,
right? And I think that coming into FFL and seeing like, wow, nobody keeps secrets, it almost made
mm.
me feel like, somebody got to be out there keeping secrets, like, because that's what I grew up
Yeah.
in, right?
Well, that's the
Um,
industry in a whole. It's they're very, when I have some mentors that are like in their 60s, 70s, they've been in the business 30, 40 years. When they hear how the culture is, they don't get it. Like they don't get that people are just willing to share what they're doing and how they're having success. So that's pretty cool. Um, for those that don't know your sister and the relationship that you guys have and how you work together, I'd love for you to share a little bit of that and just because it's so awesome to see. And for those that don't know what maybe kind of systems, process, things you do, I love it. Whatever comes top of mind that you could share there, I'd love to hear.
Yeah, so coming into FFL again, Christina, my sister, she was also really jaded by the industry. But one thing I did, Frank, that was really smart was we linked our bank accounts, right? And that was for the sole purpose of my mom passed on. So we had this linked bank account. So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and just put all the deposits into that account so Christina can see that, right? Um, and it took her a while. My own sibling, like, who's on the call right now, it took her about a year and a half, correct me if I'm wrong, Christina, to come over to the business. But once she came over, 2 years, okay,
2 years.
Yeah, way to hate on me, Christina. No, I'm only kidding. But once she came into FFL, she saw it. She saw like, hey, this can't just work for 2 years and then like
Yeah.
it doesn't work, right? And really what we saw together was like, hey, we've always wanted to build a business together. We talked about it since we were kids. We were like, making our own ice cream shop at the house when we were kids, playing kitchen, whatever you want to call it, and making our own menu. So I'm like, dude, like this is an opportunity that we can really treat something how we always wanted to, like a business, and we can do it together. Like, and when we do things together, just like, you put two people together that it's like, like you get the best of both worlds. Like there's some things Christina's extremely patient with, but like I'm not, and completely vice versa. Now, in terms of kind of that dynamic, it's like people have said to me, I've had so many mean things said to me about this, Frank, because people are like, oh, well, don't we all just wish we had a sister? It's like, okay, well, go recruit somebody and like, and do the same thing, right? Because I want to be clear, this is duplicatable, right? So Christina came in and we came in with the intentions of Christina's really going to focus on the building side. And I was already producing at a pretty high level. So I was going to focus on the production side and the training of agents. And that's still how we run it till this day. Christina's involved with agents. She does all the onboarding. She does all the recruiting, essentially weeding out people that aren't going to be a good fit for our group, so on and so forth. From there, we're working together as a team. We're communicating. I think that's really important because I think sometimes I think people under communicate, especially bringing people in, and that's simply like not fair. So we over communicate to a point that we just want to. My job, I look at it, it's to help agents. No matter, I don't care who they're direct to within my group. It's to help agents get where they want to go. And like Christina's job is to bring in the right people. And when we look at it that way, it just simplifies everything.
Got it. Okay, so are you doing in-home still? Are you doing telesales? Talk to us about that.
Yeah, so about 9 months ago I went all virtual. It was a big change.
Let's hear about that.
Yeah, so I mean, I really convinced myself, Frank, for the longest time. I was really against, like, not like against, but like I wasn't like, oh, I can't wait to sit at my house and do telesales. Like I was like for me, I'm like, oh, I want to be out and about in the field, talking to people and interactive.
You figured it out. Yeah.
Like I'm like, exactly. I got this down. It works. Like if it's not broken, like why do we have to fix it? But it's like, we had to fix it for quite a few reasons because hey, virtual, it is what like it's here. It's happening, right? But my first month, because of my limiting beliefs of like, I wouldn't give my social security number over the phone. I wouldn't give my bank account over the phone, right? It's like, okay, well, Marysa, maybe you wouldn't fill a lead out on Facebook for life insurance. You know what I mean? So, it looks a lot different. So Frank, that first month, I really struggled, right? Like I would set appointments. I'd be getting no-showed, like, because the no-show rate, we all know it. I don't know why I thought mine was going to be, any better. I don't know why I thought I was like, better than the no-show rate.
Secret leads, yeah.
Yeah, it shined through, and through that though, what I realized is I was doing all the wrong habits, right? Like I would do, if I was in the field, I get no-showed, I'm going to door knock. Like I'm not wasting time. Like I'm calling people, I'm active, right? If I'm in the field, I'm in the field. And what I realized about telesales is like, Frank, I'd be like, I get no-showed and I'd call Christina, right? And I'd be like, hey, I just got no-showed. And she's like, okay, like you're gonna call the people, like, like what's your problem, right? And I'm like, then every week I'm like, I need a new script. It's the script, like, I need new leads. I need new this. I have to. I was like the brand new agent, paralysis by analysis, right?
Yep.
I was trying to do everything when what I realized is all I had to do it was a transfer of activity. It was a transfer of schedule. And one day, Frank, I called Christina And Christina was just flat out over it. She's like, dude, she's just like, stop calling me, right? She said, how about Marysa? She said, how about flat like this? How about you just send them your credentials and you do your in-home? And I was like, that's not going to work. Like I'm not in the house, you know? And it does work, guys. That's my point is it did work. So, you know, what I realized is all we're
Mm-hmm.
asking is like these who, what, when, where, why, how questions. We're identifying the problem and we're providing a solution, whether we're face to face or over the
Mm.
phone, you got to treat it the same. And once that clicked for me, it was like I was back in the field, so to say, in terms of production numbers.
Got it. What would you say were like the biggest things that you had to, in addition to what you just explained, what were some things that stand out that you had to overcome in that transition? If you're looking back, whether it be like actually in the conversation or just like you said, maybe the mindset of dialing, did you have to change like your kind of schedule around dialing? Anything stand out?
Yeah, the biggest things that stand out when someone would ask me that is it might sound silly, but automation's huge with
Mm.
telesales, obviously. My technology skills are that of like, you know, an 85-year-old. Like literally, like I can barely get on Zoom. Like that's what Christina's really good at. And essentially, like that was a big hurdle for me, you know, trying to understand like how do I build up these workflows so that the text messages on Ringy drip properly. And it became like this like overwhelming, you know, thought, right? But like
Hmm.
I had to take a step back and realize, like, dude, it ain't that overwhelming. Like, all we're doing is, you know, like putting text messages like you normally send into a campaign. But I did overthink it.
Hmm.
You know, another thing was, you know, sending my credentials and oversharing, right? Now, I think at this time, that I got a call or I got an email rather, and it was like, and some, you know, some of you guys are going to be like, oh, I know exactly. Some others of you are going to be like, I got no idea what she's talking about. You know, like the McAfee like spyware thing, like
Oh my goodness. Yes.
okay, so like I get the email, right? That like, oh, my thing renewed. And I was like, oh, I just got my new computer. I know that I already have that. So like let me give them a shout and let them know like I don't need it, right?
So nice of
And
you.
yeah, so one thing turns to another. I'm on the phone with them, and next thing I know, you know, like they're trying to have me wire transfer money to Singapore. Okay, I know I got ahead of myself there, but my point is
Yeah.
that's how technology uninclined I was. Now, I remember, and my point of bringing this up is I remember when I spoke with them on the phone, they were almost like too nice. Like
Yeah.
it didn't make sense.
Mm-hmm.
It's like suspicious, right? So it actually shined through to me. And I was thinking about it because I'm like, why am I not closing? Like, why am I getting through it? And I think it's all great. And then I'm not closing. And it's like my
Mm.
tonality was like, all right, Frank, now grab a pen and paper and like, here's my credentials, here's my driver's license. You know, here, like, I might as well have sent them my birth certificate, right? Like, it became shady, right? So in that process, what I realized was, hey, it's very important to send credentials, but like you don't have to stay on credentials for 5 minutes, like
Mm.
the McAfee, you know, people did, right?
Right.
Like that. So I realized like that transfer, it doesn't work and you sound weird. So like focus on your tonality and just be direct. Like act like, you know, like as if you're a state worker sitting in an office calling people. And when you can operate with that mindset versus like, oh my God, they might not give me their social. It's like, dude, get them on the phone and see like and help them with their life insurance, you know?
Yeah.
So my point in
And I'm
bringing up the
sorry to
Singapore,
interrupt, but before I
you're good.
forget, because I've never sat with you in a home, so I've never seen you and your personality. And I know your personality to an extent, but would you say that you were kind of friendly and bubbly in the home, and you had to be more intentionally kind of numb and just level-headed, level tone, or did you have to go back to who you were in the home?
So the thing is in the home, you know, when I set the appointment, I usually was very stern, like really kind of like rude, but very direct. Like Frank, is 5 or 7 better? Any reason your wife will not be home? Because my schedule is really booked. Like, you know, it's like I sounded busy. Like I knew that script
Yep.
like back of my hand. Now,
Hmm.
when I got to your house, I'm like, hey, Frank, like it's great to meet you, like, you know, and I'm all smiley and nice. Just to warm it up, right? Now at the end of now when I before I go into my pitch, so to say, like I'm gonna be nice to you, but I'm gonna tell you, Frank, like, hey, before we go through this, I just want to make sure you guys understand My job is to help you guys see if there's even a problem here. If there is a problem, my job is to help you find the solution. If there's not a problem, I'm going to be the first person to tell you. But if there is, do I have your permission to be extremely direct with you guys of what that problem is going to fold out to be? And they always said yes in the home. Guys, on the phone, they always say yes too. But what I realized is being on the phone and starting with that uppity tonality doesn't always help. You got to get on the phone and be stern, direct, busy, important, and control. Just like how I would almost set the appointment. And then while you're in the telesale, you're warming up to that person more versus coming off extremely friendly and nice, like your best friend when you're first getting on the phone with them.
So more like throughout the application is when you start building the rapport.
Exactly.
Getting a little friendlier. Okay. Now, do you still use that same line in telesales that you just share with us?
Yes.
The one about do I have your permission to be direct? You said the same thing now.
I do.
Got it. Okay.
Same
Awesome.
thing. The only thing I'm doing different there is I'm just being a bit more direct in the beginning because it's like, Frank, if you don't want the insurance, I'd rather you hang up on me in the first 5 minutes than me spend 40 minutes with you and like you're not ready. You know what I mean?
Yep. If you don't mind, can we go through the initial first couple minutes of your telesales call?
Yeah.
I could be 68-year-old Frank.
All right, cool. All right, ring ring.
Are you calling mortgage or final expense or blend?
Blend.
Blend.
What do you want to be?
Whatever, doesn't matter.
All right, let's do a mortgage, and let's just say you were on my calendar because I do set up my mortgage appointments.
Got it. Okay.
All right, so ring ring.
Hello.
Hi, Frank.
Yep.
This is Marysa. I'm just giving you a quick call for our scheduled appointment to go over the mortgage protection. How are you?
Doing well. How about you?
All right. I'm doing well. Thanks for asking. Now is still a good time?
Yeah. How long is this going to take?
Yep, it just takes about 15, 20 minutes, Frank. If you go ahead and grab a pen and paper. Is your wife there with you as well?
She is, yeah.
All right, great. And I'm on speakerphone.
Yep, I can put you on.
All right, perfect. And what's her first name, just so I'm not rude?
Maria.
Maria. Hi, Maria. How are you?
She's doing great.
Doing great. All right, perfect. All right, so Frank and Maria, before we kind of jump into things, you have that pen and paper, Frank?
Yes.
All right, so my first name is Marysa, and guys, I want to time out real quick. I don't care if I've given them my name 87 times. It's really important when you get on the phone and give them your name. All right, so my name's Marysa. It's spelled Marysa. My last name is Maggio. That's Maggio. And now, Frank, I'm going to give you my NPN, also known as my national producer number. That number is 1766-4346. That's like my work social security number to identify me here within the state of Florida. That way, you know you're speaking with the licensed and active professional. And I know you received text on this phone. Is that right, Frank?
It is, yeah.
All right, perfect. You should have a text message with my state license and that NPN just for any future reference. Now, Frank and Maria, when you guys sent the request in, was there a particular concern we had or really just looking to potentially cover that mortgage?
Yeah, just we saw the information about the mortgage protection, and we saw that when we first refinanced the house, but we never looked into it really.
Okay, got it. All right, so we're just taking a look at it for the first time?
Yep.
All right, perfect. Well, before we jump into things, I do just want to quickly tell you essentially who I am, my role, my purpose, and really what I'm going to walk through with you guys today, just so we're not caught off guard at all, okay?
Okay.
I'll wait too. I need the okay, right? All right, so I'm what they refer to as a state field underwriter or state broker, simply just meaning I work together with the state of Florida on one end, and then about 80 or so different companies that offer these mortgage protection programs on the other end. So my job really is to do that shopping around for you guys to get you the lowest rate based off what we're looking to cover, if the coverage is deemed, necessary at all. So I'm not independent or partial to any one company. I'm much more individual to you guys and your family. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit about the mortgage itself to make sure I do understand how everything is set up, a little bit about finances and plans you may already have in place, just like I mentioned, because you guys may not need this at all. and then a little bit about health, not to be invasive, just to make sure whatever application we're applying for today, we're going to get you guys approved for coverage and we're not going to get you declined. Does that make sense?
Yes.
All right. And Frank and Maria, biggest thing, I always know everybody has a budget. I do. Hopefully you guys do. And the guy down the street from both of us does. So we want to make sure whatever we're looking at today will suit the need, suit the budget. We'll do our best to make them work together. Now, I am a really direct person. If there's a problem, I'm going to state it to you guys. And I'm also going to help you find the solution. If there's not a problem, I'm going to be the first person to tell you guys, there's really not a problem here and I don't really see a need for it. I am extremely direct. Is that okay with you guys?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, beautiful.
Just don't be mean.
All right, I won't be mean, just direct. All right,
All
now,
right.
Frank, I got you here at 68 years old.
Yes, that's correct.
And now I'm just going to go into my presentation. So that's
Okay.
kind of my introduction. Yeah, and I'll set the stage for 5 minutes because it's like, I need those okays. I need those, yes, that makes sense. I need them to be walking with me, right? In the moment that they're not on telesales, guys, it's like they could be walking in the park, walking their dog, have you on mute, not listening. Like make sure the person's listening to you.
Yeah, that's great. And then would you say that you do a similar script with like final expense? Do you kind of get more into the why, or is there anything you do differently there?
So with final expense, my script is a little bit different, but the only thing I always say it's interchangeable. I'm taking out mortgage and I'm replacing it with, like, for example, Frank, we're going to talk a little bit about your finances and plans you already have in place and a little bit about your health, right? I'm just taking the mortgage part out. Everything else is pretty much across the board the same. I'm just introducing it more as a final expense appointment, the concern in that sense versus the concern for the mortgage.
Okay, got it. And then what would you say, like, if you're doing a mortgage protection with a 30-year-old versus a mortgage protection with like a 7-year-old, are there any kind of pain points or different things that you do between the ages?
Yeah, so I actually spoke earlier with a 30-year-old, now that you bring it up, and she was the same age as me. I called the lead and I was trying to just book the appointment, and she's like, I don't need it, right? And she hung up. I called her back and I was like, hey, Lindsay, I don't know what her name is. Hey Lindsay, I understand that you're saying that you don't need it, but do you know why I'm calling? And she's like, well, yeah, about like if I die, right? I don't have kids, I'm not married, this, that, the third. I said, I don't have kids and I'm not married either. I said, but here's what I know. If I got sick or I got hurt, I'm not gonna be able to make my mortgage payment. Would you be able to make yours? And she was like, well, I mean, like, I thought it's just about, now she's trying to, I thought it was if I die, right? All in all, point being is I was able to book the appointment because when you're talking to that 30-year-old, depending, if they have a family, they have children, they're married, that's a little bit different than what I'm talking about here. But I am going to always hone in a lot on those living benefits because I bet every single person on this call knows somebody that's had cancer before. Like, I bet everybody does, unfortunately, right? But it's like, it's a high probability for all of us and it doesn't discriminate. So I think that it's really important to hone in on that with the younger folks. And also just more like, driven towards whether it's income protection, you know what I mean? Like it's understanding it's just conceptually selling. But when I'm talking to a 70-year-old, for example, I'm asking different questions like, if it's John and Mary, I'm like, okay, in John's concerned, if something happens to him because of his income, Mary's not going to be in a good situation. The conversation there is going to sound like, okay, well, like first I'm going to ask, what would it look like for you, Mary, if, John had, God forbid, passed away last night? And if John starts talking, like, I'm going to say, John, no disrespect, but you passed away last night. We need to know what your wife would do today. And usually they're like, okay, all right. And usually the wife or whomever, they don't really like I don't really know. It would be really hard. Okay, what is hard? Like, what would it look like, right? Like, what would it look like, Mary? Would you be able to stay in the home? Like, where would you go? Do you have any family you'd be living with? Like, if they're, like, what does that look like? And then most importantly, I think with older folks is honing in on equity, especially whether it like in a mortgage appointment. Equity is huge. Equity is leverage. And when those folks are older, yeah, you have some that won't have equity, but then you'll have some that have $600,000 of equity, 100 grand on the mortgage. It's like, we need to protect the equity. So it's a
Mm,
different conversation of, Mary, do you think you would sell the home, or would you want to stay in the home? Right? Like, those types of questions, guys, they're really important when somebody's over the age of like 55, because or has health elements, because they're probably not going to qualify for term. You have to go
mm,
equity rescue, critical period, however you want to, refer to that. But I'm
mm-hmm.
making sure that they understand it's a permanent protection product that's going to cover X amount of the mortgage payments. And this might sound terrible, but sometimes you might be like, well, what if Mary does want to stay in the house? It's like, I want Mary to stay in the house too, man. But it's like, that's why we're buying her time, right? Miss Mary, who's debatably, 70 years old, it's like,
Mm,
she's probably going to be able to refinance it at a rate she can sustain on her own once they knock it down a bit. But if she can't, it's going to give her the option to sell it, put it on the market, not have it short sold. She's going to be able to make sure she's living on her terms, not the terms of the bank. And I think that
mm.
that's really powerful. Like, in any appointment, it's just helping them understand what the situation is going to look like without the insurance and what the situation would look like with the insurance.
Yeah, no, that's great. What would you say, like a new agent you see a lot, because I know you have a lot of you work with a lot of new agents. What would you say, whether it be final expense, IUL, mortgage protection, what would you say some of the things, whether it be like with handling objections or, just overall conversations, where do you think they drop the ball in the beginning? What are some mistakes that a typical new agent makes in telesales?
So a couple of things I commonly see is you don't follow your schedule. If you don't follow your schedule here,
Mm,
it's simply not going to work. Like, you could be the best, salesperson in the world. It doesn't matter if you don't work your schedule. No one's going to show up and work for you. The second thing would be tonality. So it's like, if the agent's picking the phone up, we got to that point, they're following the schedule, beautiful. Now, picking the phone up, I think the biggest thing new agents struggle with is tonality. Sometimes we have that lack of confidence or that lack of belief in ourselves. And like, here's what we all have to realize is like, no matter who you can point to on this call or in the industry in general, it's like, we all started somewhere, and none of us
mm,
sounded how we sound today, even if it was we just started yesterday, right? So realizing
mm-hmm,
like every day you're getting better. And I think sometimes agents either give themselves too much credit or they don't give themselves enough credit. And when I'm saying give themselves too much credit, that's like, hey, Frank, I worked all day, and you're like, how many dials did you make? And I'm like, I made 30 dials, and like nobody answered. And one person told me they already got it taken care of. It's like, okay, like, no. You sat on Zoom all day, and you looked at the computer. Like, you made 30 dials, right? So kind of almost tricking themselves into like, I did work, but they didn't work. And just tonality is huge. That's the biggest thing I see people drop the ball. But that all comes from confidence and showing up. When you show up, like you said you were going to on your schedule, I typically,
mm,
Frank, see that those agents are more confident than the ones that show up when they feel like.
mm.
So that's one of the biggest things I would say is pivotal. And last thing I would touch on there would be in that conversation, being nervous to ask for certain things like the social or the bank. It's like the tonality will be all good. And then it's like, in Frank, what's your social? It's like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like a click, right?
Dun
And like,
dun
I think,
dun.
right. Like, it's like, just ask. Nobody like, okay, you were born in Massachusetts. Great. And what's your social? All right, moving on. Right. And when we're able to
Mm,
do it that way, it feels a lot more fluent, and it feels more fluent to the client too.
yeah, love that. This has been great. So okay. Last this is the last question I'm going to ask you. If you could leave everybody, and this could be for a new agent, this could be maybe a struggling agent that had a setback and they're just working hard to get back to where they were. Um, what's one or two things you just leave to everybody?
When you don't feel like doing something and you really don't feel like doing it, do it anyways, and do it at the highest level you can in that moment.
Mm,
There's going to be times in this business that you struggle, and you have to realize that's you stepping into the new version of yourself. You asked me earlier in the conversation, Frank, am I the same person I was 5 years ago? Absolutely not. And I'm so thankful for that. But without those adversities and those days I didn't want to do things and pushing through them, I wouldn't be where I am today. And I wouldn't just be the
Mm,
person characteristically I am today. So if you're going through things, you got to, everyone's going through things. And I
hmm
realize, hey, your situation might be different than mine. Like probably his, right? Everyone on this call has stuff. But if we're able to pack it away and go to work like we would corporate wise, and we're working for ourselves, like,
mm,
guys, hear that, hear it, say it out loud, right? Like, ask yourself, like, would I fire me? Right? Like, would I
hmm
fire myself? And that's literally what I ask myself on a day-to-day basis, Frank. Like, would you fire you? Because if the answer is yes, it's like, dude, do better. Like, you're better than that. So everyone on this call is more than capable of doing the work that needs to be done here. It's just about, are you going to show up, and are you going to let mental setbacks, allow you to stop doing what you're
mm,
doing? Because that's another commonality thing that we're going to see. It's like this business, it all starts upstairs. It can also all quickly end upstairs, right? Like Frank, till this day, like full disclosure, guys, like I'm like, you know what, I quit, and then like 5 minutes later, I'm back at my desk, right? It's like, but that's how it's supposed to be. Like every day is not going to be rainbows and butterflies. Like if it was,
hmm
everyone would be doing this. And that's why you have the opportunity in your hand. So utilize it, use it, show up when you don't want to, improve to yourself. You're way stronger than you ever thought you were. So that's what I would say, Frank.
Wow. Talk about Marysa putting the gold in the gold standard, guys. Love it, love it, love it. Thank you so much for your time. Thanks, Christina, for being on.
Absolutely.
Appreciate you, ladies.
I appreciate you having me
Anything I
on.
could do for you, please let me know. But thank you again.
You
That was
got it.
great. Awesome
Thanks for
stuff.
having me on. You guys take
Thank you.
care.
Thank you.
Bye.